You wake to the sound of bells. Not loud ones. Not the type that proclaim wars or weddings. These bells are smaller, hand held, shaken by a monk with soft sandals and even softer intentions. The sound slips into your room like a breeze, brushing against the dusty stone walls, curling through the carved wooden shutters. Outside, the sky is grey, not sad, just undecided. You're in a stone monastery nestled in the green folds of the Ethiopian highlands. The year is the exact year depends on which calendar you ask. But we'll call it late 15th century, a time when prayer had a scent and silence had texture. Your cell is bare. A low bed of straw and folded wool, a small clay bowl of water, and a wooden shelf with 2 books. Not ones you can read, yet those are in G's, the ancient liturgical language you're learning one slow syllable at a time. There's incense in the air, citrus-inged and warm. The scent of dried orange peel crushed into resin, folded with frankincense, and lit in a shallow bronze bowl. It smells like sunrise might taste. Use it up, rubbing your eyes which are still full of sleep and yesterday's ash. Welcome. You're now an apprentice scribe in one of Ethiopia's highland monasteries, and your day will be filled with silence, ink, and smoke. You probably won't make it through this day. Before we begin, feel free to gently like this video, and if your eyes are still open, maybe even subscribe. Drop us a comment with where you're listening from and your local time. It's always comforting to imagine sleepy companions across the globe. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You dress slowly layers of cotton robes, faded and a little itchy. Outside your door, the hallway smells of lemon oil and damp earth. Someone polished the wooden floorboards with something vaguely spicy. Your feet make no sound. In the scriptorium, a narrow room carved partly from rock and partly from stubborn timber, the monks sit in neat rows. Each has a scroll before them, a reed pen in hand, and a bowl of ink perched on a stone block. The windows are thin and high, letting in light like a secret. Your task is to copy a prayer. Not just any prayer. This one has already been copied 20-3 times, and each version smells faintly different depending on what incense was burning nearby. That's not an accident. Major historical fact: Ethiopian monks often wrote in the presence of incense not just for atmosphere, but as a sacred tool. Scented smoke was believed to carry prayer upward, and even imprinted subtly onto the inken page. Some texts still retain faint smells centuries later. You dip your pen. The ink is thick and dark, made from soot, gum, and a whisper of citrus peel. Your hand shakes just a little, but the monk beside you, a quiet man named Jeber, who hasn't spoken to you in 3 weeks, gives a small nod of approval. Or maybe he just had a neck itch. Outside, the rain begins. Gentle, steady, like a mother's humming. It makes the monastery feel even more tucked away. Safe. Forgotten in the best way. Obscure tidbits some scribes believed that writing during rainfall increased the power of the prayer, especially if the smoke was lemon-scented. One even claimed it cleared the air of impure spirits and wandering thoughts. Historians still debate whether that was spiritual guidance or just very good aromatherapy. You finish the first line. Then the second. The incense curls upward in thin, sleepy spirals, and the prayer begins to settle onto the page, soft and invisible as morning breath. Hours pass, though the light barely changes. Clouds still sit stubborn over the hills, shading the monastery in gentle gray. You haven't spoken since breakfast, unless you count your whisper to the ink pot when it threatened to tip. The page before you is filling slowly. The G's script curls and loops, solemn and elegant, like it's walking carefully through a holy place. Each letter is a step. Each word a pause for breath. Across the room, a young monk sneezes. No one reacts, except for one elderly scribe who squints at the incense bowl like it might be to blame. You suppress a smile. The scent has shifted, slightly less citrus now, more something resinous and sweet. You glance toward the window. Someone must have added myrrh to the burner. The air feels thicker, like the room is exhaling. Jiba clears his throat quietly. HES finished his page. The letters shine wetly in the light. He stands, bowing slightly toward the scroll before rolling it carefully and placing it on a shelf. Then he leaves. You wonder where he goes when HES not writing. Perhaps he prays. Perhaps he feeds the goat that occasionally shows up near the back gate. You've named the goat Fiker, though you've never admitted this aloud. Your pen begins to dry. You dip it again, stir the ink slowly. The bowl is small, smooth, and slightly warm to the touch. You were told it was carved from a stone found only on the southern ridge. It holds ink well. It also once held roasted coffee beans, but that's a different story. Major historical fact: Ethiopian scribes developed a unique scriptural style known as SCR2, combining precise pen control with rhythmic pacing. Writing was not rushed, it was liturgical, almost meditative. A single page could take days, depending on the complexity and the incense blend in use. You shift slightly, legs stiff. Outside, a bird calls once, sharply. Rain still taps the roof like a quiet debate. You pause, closing your eyes briefly. And then it happens. A breeze, sudden and cool, slips through the high window and stirs the incense. The smoke dances sideways, drifting across your scroll, brushing the wet ink. You stare. The scent deepens. You feel, for one quiet moment, that something has landed in the room. Not seen, not said, but present. Obscure tidbits, some scribes recorded moments when smoke moved of its own will as signs of divine presence. One text describes a scroll that refused to dry until the wind changed direction. Another mentions a page too fragrant to store, which was hung in the chapel for 3 months. You add one last line to the page. Then you blow gently across the scroll. The ink settles. The smoke fades. And somewhere, beneath the smell of lemon and prayer, your page begins to remember what it means to hold breath in silence. You wake early the next morning not from bells or birdsong, but from silence. The kind that presses lightly on your ears, makes you blink a little too long and wonder if time forgot to keep ticking. The sky outside your shutter is still a soft navy, pierced by a single flickering star, probably late for bed. You wrap your robe tighter and pad barefoot down the narrow hallway. The stone floor is cool, and the air smells of wood smoke, rosemary, and something lemony again. The citrus lingers, always. Even in your sleep, it seems to whisper, wake gently. Today, you're assigned to the ink room. A low, dark chamber carved into the hill itself. The ink room smells like burnt wood, overripe fruit, and deep concentration. It's where monks mix soot with tree gum, ash, crushed herbs, and, yes, powdered citrus peel. Your task is simple: grind. Stir. Don't spill. You kneel beside the main bowl lay wide, flat basin carved from black basalt. Already, another monk is there, arms rhythmically moving as he presses a pestle into the mix. He doesn't look up. That's fine. Neither do you. The silence in this room is not oppressive. It's purposeful. It makes the drip of water from the ceiling sound like punctuation. Major historical fact: Ethiopian monks developed their own ink recipes, combining carbons with organic binders and occasional aromatic additives. Unlike European iron gall ink, Ethiopian inks tended to be more resilient to mold and humidity, a practical adaptation to highland conditions. Your arms begin to ache in that quiet, Noble way you hope someone notices. They won't. Beside you, the other monk adds a pinch of something to the mix. A fine yellow powder. You catch the scent dried lemon rind, sun-aged and ground into brightness. The scent lifts the whole room. It's like someone opened a memory. You pour a ladle of warm water into the basin. The mixture darkens, swirls, thickens. The monk beside you nods once. Approval, you think. You smile unseen. Hours pass in slow, sacred circles. When the ink reaches the right consistency, a balance between syrup and silence, you transfer it to shallow clay pots. Each one will warm over coals before use, releasing just a hint of lemon with every dip of the pen. You carry them, slowly, carefully, to the scriptorium. No talking. Just footfalls, the creak of old hinges, and the occasional sigh of a monk stretching a little too far for a scroll. You place the pots down. Your work for now is done. And somewhere across the room, a prayer begins to form, the ink still warm, still fragrant, still proud. After lunch, which consists of lentils, flat bread, and something suspiciously crunchy, you return to your corner of the scriptorium. The light has shifted slightly, pouring in through the windows in lazy gold ribbons. Dust dances in it like thoughts not yet caught on paper. Your new assignment is different. Not a prayer, not a hymn, a letter, to be sent with the next caravan down to Lake Donna, written in G's, addressed to a neighboring monastery. You don't know what it says, not your place, but you know how to write it. You unroll the parchment, a thick vellum scraped from goat hide, soft as worn cloth. It smells faintly of the hillside, and possibly of Fiker the goat himself. You wonder briefly if HES offended. You dip your pen into the ink. Still warm, still scented. The first word curves under your hand like a blessing. Major historical fact letters between Ethiopian monasteries were both formal and poetic. They included prayers, news, and sometimes theological riddles meant to test each other's scriptural knowledge. One letter from the 15th century includes 5 lines of coded verse followed by respond only if you understand the hidden metaphor of the second moon. You write slowly, carefully. The lemon mine is scented smoke from the incense burner nearby curls toward the parchment. You blow it gently, let it kiss the page. It's a habit now, a quiet superstition. Across the room, Jeber coughs once, clears his throat, and begins humming a tune so soft it could be mistaken for wind. The letter is nearly done. At the bottom, you add a simple seal cross-drawn with dots, wrapped in an oval. It's the monastery S symbol meant to resemble both an eye and a seed. You seal the parchment with beeswax, then press a carved stamp into it. Still warm. It holds. Obscure tidbits: some Ethiopian scribes believed the seal must be applied while the scent of incense still lingers on the scroll. Otherwise, one claimed, the words may wander. Another warned, the smoke is the leash. You place the letter in the travel pouch. A novice will carry it tomorrow, down the valley, across streams and thorny paths, to another stone room like yours where someone else will breathe in the citrus smoke and wonder who wrote so slowly. Use it back. Stretch. Outside, the sun leans lower. The ink pot beside you is nearly empty now, but the scent remains. Light. Lingered. Proud. Evening descends like a long exhale. You walk through the courtyard barefoot, the stone still warm beneath your soles. Overhead, the sky is a quiet tapestry of violet and fading peach, the kind of colors that whisper instead of shout. The monastery settles into its evening rhythm, bowls being washed, lamps being lit, goats being gently scolded for trying to steal figs again. Fikar, naturally, is at the center of it all, chewing something that definitely doesn't belong to him. You pass the open door of the kitchen, where a monk stirs a pot that smells like lentils, cinnamon, and resignation. He nods. You nod back. That's more conversation than you've had all day. Your destination is the chapel. Not for prayer, but for light. A single narrow room carved into the stone, lit by 3 oil lamps and one window that always catches the last rays of the sun. This is where tonight's transcription will happen. You're copying a psalm, not the whole thing, just a portion about stillness, smoke, and the voice of the invisible. You unroll a fresh scroll, already prepared with guidelines. The surface smells faintly of thyme and lemon wax, an extra touch by the monk who handles parchment preparation. H.E.S., a quiet perfectionist who insists even goats deserve elegance. Major historical fact: Ethiopian parchment preparation was a sacred art. Skins were soaked, scraped, stretched, and oft unscented, not just to preserve them, but to spiritually prepare the page for divine words. Some even contain stitched edges believed to seal in blessings. You dip your pen. The ink tonight feels slightly thicker, like it's remembering something. You begin to write. The script is familiar, now each curve a muscle memory, each letter a breath. Outside, the wind picks up softly, rustling the tall grasses along the hillside. Somewhere, a bell rings, not urgent, just a reminder that time is still a thing. You pause. The chapel is quiet except for the tiny hiss of oil in the lamps. Then faint, unexpected, the smell of oranges. You glance toward the far wall, where a small burner holds a thin spiral of incense. It glows faintly red, releasing a scent that wraps the room in sleepy sweetness. It's calming, slightly tart, unmistakably citrus. Obscure tidbit: in some monastic communities, monks time their most difficult copying tasks with specific incense blends. Citrus for focus, myrrh for reverence, juniper for patience. One ancient guideline even suggests rosemary for writing about regrets. You continue. The psalm describes clouds as messengers, smoke as a robe, and silence as the language of God. You try not to read too deeply, but something about it settles into your shoulders. You keep writing. Outside, the last light vanishes from the window. You finish the scroll just as the oil in the lamp begins to gutter. One final flourish. A tiny cross. A slow breath. You hold the scroll gently, letting the ink sit. You watch the smoke rise. And you think for just a second that even the silence smells proud. The next morning arrives with birds. Not the elegant kind, these are small, loud, feathered bursts of anxiety. They swarm the fig trees in the courtyard, arguing in high-pitched chirps about fruit distribution. You eat your breakfast beneath them anyway, watching them squabble and steal. Viker wanders by under tents to eat your bread. You fend him off with a stern glance. He ignores it but takes the hint. Today, your task is unusual. You've been invited to assist in scroll recovery. That's what Brother Tekel calls it. In practice, it means venturing into a damp storeroom beneath the eastern wall to rescue a series of mildewed scrolls that have decided to start growing moss. You bring cloths, bowls of vinegar water, and a handful of cedar bark. The air in the storage room is thick like breathing through a history book that someone forgot to dust for 300 years. The scrolls are stacked in clay jars, some labeled, some not. You open them carefully. Some are fine. Some are fused together. One has been partially eaten by what appears to be a very scholarly worm. Major historical fact: in Ethiopian monasteries, scrolls were often stored in cylindrical clay cases called tabot jars, designed to protect them from moisture and insects. These worked remarkably well until they didn't. Scroll recovery was a slow, delicate process involving cleaning, drying, and sometimes partial ray-transcription. You unroll one gently. The script is faded but intact. You recognize a fragment from the Book of Enoch, written in looping lines of G's. You wipe it with damp cloth, whispering apologies to no one in particular. Brother Checo hums behind you. HES sorting parchment by texture. This one smells like regret, he says, sniffing a particularly yellowed sheet. You ask what incense was used with it. Clove and lemon, I think. For clarity, or to keep ants away. You both nod solemnly, like this is perfectly logical. Obscure tidbit in rare cases, monks use scented oils to revive damaged parchment. One formula involved lemon peel steeped in hot wine, brushed gently onto the scroll. According to one monk's notes, it also made the texts easier on the eyes and less offensive to the nose. By midday, you've cleaned 6 scrolls. 1 is beyond saving. You copy what you can. The rest you lay on a flat shelf in the sun, weighted with stones. The air now smells of citrus, cedar, vinegar, and something ancient like memory that's just barely forgotten. You leave the storeroom with ink on your fingers and moss on your sleeve. Outside, the sun is high. The fig trees whisper. Fika naps under your bench. And somewhere inside the monastery, 6 scrolls dream of second chances. Late afternoon finds you in the gallery, a long, narrow room carved from soft stone, lined with scrolls that aren't meant to be touched. These are the revered ones, ancient, beautiful, and just slightly smug about it. Illuminated psalms, miniature gospel books, hymns copied so precisely the letters look like they might hum if you stare too long. Your job isn't to read them. It's to dust the shelves. With a feather. Not just any feather. A cleaned, combed, and ritually set minus aside guinea fowl feather, because piety includes maintenance, as Brother Isla often reminds everyone without being asked. You move quietly, feather in hand, brushing away cobwebs and breath minus thin layers of dust that probably contain the entire lineage of some forgotten beetle family. You try not to sneeze. The air smells of lavender and lemon again. You've stopped questioning it. You pause at a scroll decorated in reddened gold pigment. A note beside it says it was copied during a full moon over the course of 9 nights with incense burned at every turning of the hour. Major historical fact in Ethiopian script or Ia, illuminated manuscripts were sometimes timed to lunar phases. A full moon cycle was thought to bless the script with clarity and radiance. Some monks believed the moonlight itself helped guide the hand, particularly when working on reed ink. You lean in closer. The scroll is stunning, bordered with curling vines, tiny birds, and one extremely grumpy Minos-looking lion. Its eyes follow you, judging your feathering technique. Across the room, Brother Isla adjusts a candle, then begins polishing a lamp that doesn't need it. He whistles off Mineskiba cheerfully, like someone who's never spilled ink in public. You dust a shelf labeled Parables and Drained Dreams. The scrolls are wrapped in linen. One smells faintly of cloves, another of ginger. Obscure tidbits: some Ethiopian monasteries categorize their scrolls not by content, but by the scent of incense used during transcription. The ginger scrolls, it's said, contained wisdom about journeying and judgment. Clove scrolls were reserved for dreams and death rites. One monastery even claimed to have a scroll that smelled like fear, but that might have been the goat. You keep dusting. The sun slants through the high windows, tracing golden bars across the floor. You sneeze once. Apologize to the scrolls. They do not respond. Your feather, by the way, is starting to fray. You consider naming it. You decide against it. Probably too attached already. By the time you finish, the light has shifted again. Brother Isla gives you a silent nod of approval, his highest compliment. You return your feather to its stand like a knight sheathing a sword. And in the still lemon Minos-scented gallery, the old scrolls rest a little cleaner. A little prouder. That evening, you're sent to the roof. Not as punishment, though you once heard of a monk being sent up there for laughing during a solemn chant, but as part of the smoke alignment ritual. You nod like you know what that means. Turns out, it's both literal and poetic. A bronze incense burner, shaped like a tiny church, is carried up to the flat rooftop by two very serious monks. You're there to light it. The incense blend tonight includes orange peel, juniper, and a pinch of something called sundust, which no one will explain. The goal is simple: release the smoke just as the first star appears. You wait. The sky deepens from blue to bruised plum. The hills below turn to shadows. Birds vanish. Somewhere, a shepherd's song rises faintly from the valley. Then a single star, barely flickering. You strike the flint. The incense scatters. The smoke spirals up, slow and steady, toward the waiting sky. Major historical fact: Ethiopian monasteries practice rooftop incense rituals to mark specific calendar events, solstices, feast days, even script completion anniversaries. Smoke was considered a form of divine communication, and its direction was often interpreted as an omen. Tonight, the smoke drift ceased. Brother Tesfaye, the ritual reader, nods slowly. That means clarity, he says. That adds, or wind. The other monks murmur in agreement, as if both things are equally prophetic. Use it on the edge of the rooftop, feet dangling into nothing. The incense continues to burn. The air smells rich, like citrus and firewood. You feel it in your nose, your ribs, your throat. Obscure tidbits: some monks believed that if you spoke an aim into the incense smoke, it would carry that name to heaven faster. One scroll warns, use no sarcasm in smoke. The angels are very literal. You don't say anything aloud, but you think of someone. Just once. The smoke glistens. You stay a little longer. The incense finishes. The sky blooms with stars, and the scroll of night begins to unroll above your head, one luminous line at a time. You wake the next morning to find your hand stained orange. Just your writing hand. Just the fingers that held the pen. The ink from yesterday's citrus batch has seeped deeper than usual, clinging to the skin like a persistent idea. You try washing it off. Warm water. Soap. A brisk scrub with a cloth. Nothing works. You accept your fate. The monastery is buzzing today quietly, respectfully buzzing, but buzzing nonetheless. A visiting abbot from a northern province has arrived, which means everything must smell cleaner, burn brighter, and look as if no goat has ever chewed the corner of anything sacred. Fikir is on temporary lockdown. H.E.S. displeased. You're assigned to the welcome scroll. A ceremonial text, brushed anew for every honored visitor. It includes greetings, blessings, a recounting of the moon's last phase, and a short poem. The original, of course, must be copied in G's and brushed in citrus-scented ink for clarity and impression. Brother Tesfaye insists, handing you the pen like it's a relic. You settle in the gallery, sunlight slanting across the room just right. The scent of oranges and polished wood fills the air. You begin. Major historical fact: welcome scrolls work out of traditional hospitality in Ethiopian religious communities. They often included symbolic language, seasonal references, and occasionally subtle jokes, provided the abbot was known to have a sense of humor. Some included lines like, "May your wisdom overflow like the ink pot that never spills," which is only funny if you've ever spilled ink on a psalter. You write carefully, ignoring the now minus orange fingertips. Each stroke flows, the ink a little thicker than yesterday's batch, the colored ochre. You catch yourself smiling. The poem you're copying reads, "May your feet carry blessings. Your hands carry prayer. Your voice carries silence. And your thoughts drift upward, like lemon smoke in mountain air." Obscure tidbit: in one monastery, the citrus ink was considered so holy that any leftover drops were used to mark the threshold stones believed to prevent gossip from crossing the line. Scholars still debate whether this was sacred logic or just a very early HR policy. You finish the scroll just as the bell rings for midday prayer. You roll it gently, tie it with a thread dyed in indigo, and place it on the offering tray. Brother Isla carries it away like HES handling a newborn goat. You eat your lunch in the herb garden, beneath a fig tree. The wind is soft. The birds are not. Your fingers still smell like oranges. You don't mind. Afternoon becomes shadowy. Clouds gather. The wind stiffens slightly, carrying with it a sense that something is about to arrive, not weather, but a shift. Maybe in mood. Maybe in ink. You've been called to the treasury room. Not where gold is kept, this isn't that kind of place, but the archive of ceremonial texts, bound manuscripts, and prayer scrolls too delicate to use but too precious to forget. The room is dry, cool, quiet. The air smells of dust, beeswax, and the faint memory of citron wood. You walk in slowly. Every shelf feels taller than usual. Every scroll feels like it's watching. Brother Jeber is already there, holding a damaged manuscript. This one needs repair, he says simply. You nod. Take it gently. The vellum is cracked near the spine. Some ink has faded into ghost lines S. But the text is legible. And it smells lemony. Major historical fact scribes often refreshed older scrolls by Ray Minus and King, faded lines with a thin citrus minus-based wash, believed to wake the words. Some scrolls were Ray copied entirely if the scent faded beyond recognition. Monasteries considered smell an unofficial way to track a scroll's devotional lifespan. You sit at the back table where the light is softest. You unroll the scroll halfway. The damage isn't terrible, mostly where from falling on age. But here and there, a flake of pigment has broken free. You set it aside carefully. As you work, a memory surfaces, a story from Brother Tesfaye about a scroll so fragrant with lemon that a novice once mistook it for cake. You smile, then return to your task. You repair the binding. You sink a faded phrase, peace to the hills who dream of firelight. The words settle quickly. Obscure tidbit: one monastery reportedly stored its most sacred scrolls inside carved citrus trunks wood from lemon trees, sanded and shaped into ornate boxes. They claimed it preserved the words and reminded the reader to sweeten their tone. Outside, rain begins to tap lightly on the tiled roof. You finish your repairs. The scroll is returned to its shelf, safe among its kin. And as you leave the treasury, your hands, orange minus tinted and ink minus, flecked, feel both heavier and lighter. The rain falls harder. The incense in the hallway burns slower. And somewhere behind you, the words you rewrote begin again, quietly proud. The rain continues into morning. Not the hard, insistent kind, but the slow, thoughtful sort of drizzle that makes even the walls seem reflective. The paths in the courtyard glisten. Moss smells louder than usual. The goats have retreated, looking scandalized. Fiker peers out from the shed like a suspicious landlord. You're indoors today. Assigned to inventory. Specifically, the incense storeroom. It's a narrow chamber beneath the chapel, with walls lined and polished wooden boxes and rows of clay jars, each labeled with faded G's script and more curiously tiny inked drawings. A lemon here. A sprig there. One jar has a tiny goat. You choose not to open that one. You're meant to catalog the contents, names, weights, conditions, and yes, smell. Major historical fact: Ethiopian monasteries kept detailed incense inventories, not just for ritual use but as medicinal stores. Each blend had symbolic and practical meaning. Myrrh calmed the nerves, frankincense purified space, citrus awakened clarity, and juniper was said to silence arrogance, though no monk has ever confirmed if it works. You take up a scroll of linen, a reed pen, and your list begins. The first jar contains dried orange peel, finely curled. The second, a blend of lemon balm and something peppery. The third, a mix labeled for long vigils. You open it and immediately sneeze. Brother Jeeber chuckles from the doorway. That one's meant to keep the eyes open. And the nose, apparently. You make your notes, your nostrils tingling. You come across a jar sealed with waxen string. A faint smell leaks through warm, spicy, rich. You crack it open carefully. Inside a blend of cinnamon, clove, and sharp citrus. The label reads Ink Night. Obscure tidbits some monasteries had dedicated incense blends for all minus night writing vigils. Ink Night blends were designed to sharpen focus, prevent sleep, and according to one scroll, remind the spirit that a two is flammable. Historians still debate whether this was metaphor or poor labeling. You copy the label, describe the scent, reseal the jar. The smell lingers in your robe for hours. Later, in the chapel, someone lights it during evening prayers. The smoke curls along the ceiling in slow, golden ribbons. You breathe deep, and your heart, somehow, sits a little straighter. You are alone in the scriptorium tonight. Not by decree, just by rhythm. The other scribes are elsewhere, singing, cleaning, preparing for the feast day tomorrow. You volunteered to stay, not out of duty, but because the scroll you've been working on is nearly done. And there's something comforting about an empty room filled with silence and lemon smoke. Your scroll is a psalm cycle. 40-7 verses, copied over 8 days, each line inked with care, then brushed lightly with oil to protect the surface. You've come to know the text like a familiar path. You unroll it. It smells like orange blossoms and dash. You begin the final verses. Major historical fact: Ethiopian scribes often perfumed finished scrolls with a final layer of incense smoke held above a burner, never too close, until the scent infused the parchment. This wasn't just tradition. It was believed that the smell helped carry the words upward, as if the scroll itself could whisper them into the divine ear. You write slowly. Your pen flows without hesitation. Outside, the night deepens. The window panes rattle gently in the breeze. You hear distant chanting from the chapel. The low rhythm of drums. The hum of voices layered like fabric. Your fingers ache. You pause. Shake them gently. Then continue. Good. You finish your scroll. You add a final mark. A cross. A dot. A spiral. A breath. You light a burner, just a small one, and wave the scroll through the smoke. 3 slow passes. The room fills with scent. The text is complete. You let it rest on the stand. You sit beside it. And in the hush of the empty scriptorium, the scroll exhales quietly, fragrant and whole. Proud. The next morning greets you with the low murmur of footsteps and the sound of fabric swishing in rhythm. Monks in procession, preparing for the feast of Saint Hierd. You join them, your robes freshly brushed, your scroll freshly finished. The entire monastery has shifted slightly, voices lighter, incense heavier. Even the pigeons seem to be flapping with purpose. Today is not for writing. Today is for singing. But you, ever the ink-minus-stained apprentice, have been assigned to an honorable task, carrying the scroll you finished last night into the chapel. A psalm cycle, now part of the day's liturgy. You wrap it gently in cloth, slide it into a leather case, and cradle it like a fragile loaf of bread, warm and full of meaning. Major historical facts: Saint Hierd, credited with creating Ethiopian liturgical music in the 6th century, is honored with incense chants and the reading of special scrolls. His compositions, preserved in Gs, are performed to this day. His feast is one of few times when musical scrolls and standard scripture are read side by side, song and smoke together. You walk slowly into the chapel. The air is already thick with frankincense and citrus. The monks are in place, voices rising in low, layered chants that sound older than the stone beneath your feet. You hand the scroll to Brother Tesfaye, who unwraps it with care, bows toward it, and begins to read. Your words, now his voice. It's a strange feeling. You stand at the back. You watch. You smell the lemon. Obscure Tidbite Monastery in the Simi Mountains reportedly used scrolls dipped in or enjoyed during the Erd festival, believing it made the music float straighter. One monk wrote, "It sharpens the notes, like clean water on a dusty flute." Historians still debate what that actually means. The reading ends. The chant begins again, and your scroll is returned, now seasoned with sound and smoke. Later, in the quiet after the feast, you sit in the herb garden with a cup of hot tea, e.j. the monastery's very occasional honey wine. Fiker, finally freed, noses your robe in search of crumbs. The scroll rests beside you. The citrus scent is fainter now, but the pride, still strong. The next day begins slowly, as all post-minus festival days do. You find yourself walking without purpose, which is rare. Down the southern corridor, past the shadowed archway, and into a room you rarely enter, the copy vault. Not the display gallery, not the treasury, but the room where test pages mistakes and nearly minus their scrolls are kept. Drafts, practice scripts, marginalia with too many jokes. It smells like charcoal and humility. You're here to find scrap parchment, but instead, you find a scroll labeled in faded ink-failed prayer. Still smells nice. You sit on a low bench and open it. Inside is a psalm, incomplete. A commentary on smoke. A list of plants. And a note in a careful hand wrote during a storm. Words wounded. Lemon soot. You smile. Someone, long before you, was learning the same way. Major historical fact, many monasteries kept rooms for scroll apprenticeship where monks practiced copying, invented their own prayers, and tested incense reactions. Some scrolls in these rooms were never finished, but were kept for scent alone. They were said to hold prayers without speaking. You test the ink on the scroll. Still visible. Still legible. Still citrus minus scented. You begin to copy it, just for practice. The handwriting is older, lupai ia. You mimic it stroke by stroke. Obscure Tidbite rarely mention practice, involved wrapping unfinished scrolls with fresh lemon leaves before storage, to calm their ambition. One scroll stored this way for 40 years was later used in a royal coronation. Scholars call this coincidence. Monks do not. As you write, the sky outside darkens again. Clouds. Rain coming. Maybe a little thunder. You keep going. You finish the prayer. Add your own line at the end. Every word waits for its reader. You roll the scroll gently, wrap it in linen, and place it back on the shelf with a new label. Failed, maybe. Still fragrant. And as the thunder rolls gently across the valley, you walk back to your room with lemon on your sleeves and a small, sleepy grin. Evening brings with it the hush of finality, not sadness, not fatigue, just a quiet knowing that something is drawing to its close. Use it once again in the scriptorium, the same window open beside you, the same incense drifting in slow citrus spirals from the corner burner. The scroll before you is blank, clean, waiting. This is your last page of the season. Not because the monastery says so, or because someone told you to stop, but because your hand tells you. because your pen has worn a little thinner, and the ink bowl is lower than it's been in days. Because the silence around you feels complete. You dip the pen. Begin the title final benediction for the season of writing. No one gave you this title. You invent it. Major historical fact in some Ethiopian monastic calendars. The end of the rainy season marked a temporary pause in scrollwork. Fields needed tending, repairs were made, and scribes rested their hands. Some scrolls contain notations like, ended this line as the rains faded, or closed the book until the goats stopped fighting. You write slowly. Your hand is sure now. Each stroke carries less worry, more rhythm. You don't even glance at the inkpot. The scent of orange peel rises each time you pause. The benediction is simple, just a few lines. May the ink rest where the hand does. May the smoke rise when no words are spoken. May the lemon burn slow, and the silence linger longer than the scribe. You sign with a small spiral. A dot. A breath. Obscure tidbit, one anonymous scroll, likely from the 15th century. Ends with this line, I leave my mistakes in the margins. They belong here, too. Scholars still debate if it was humility or a very subtle resignation letter. You unroll the scroll once more. Blow gently across the last line. The ink shimmers, then settles. You carry it to the shelf yourself. Place it between the Psalms and the Fables. You don't label it. You just know where it is. Outside, the rain has stopped. The wind is softer now, brushing through the fig trees like fingers across an old page. You walk back through the halls, nodding at familiar shadows, familiar stones. You pass the moon basin. Still full. Still watching. Fiker trots by with something probably important in his mouth. You let him be. You reach your door. You light one last coil of incense or inge myrrh and something sweet you can't name. And then you lie down. The night stretches long and low across the hills. The sky above the monastery is brushed with stars, blurred gently by mist. A soft wind whispers over the rooftop tiles and down through the olive trees, carrying with it the faintest scent of citrus and dash. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls once, then quiets like a page being turned at the end of a story. The scrolls rest on their shelves now, warm in their linen wrappings, their words still breathing gently beneath ink that has dried with pride. The scriptorium sleeps. The pens lie still. The burners have cooled to a soft glow, and even the smoke has forgotten its urgency. You breathe slower now. The bench where you sit this morning has cooled, but your presence lingers like a thumbprint on a page. You feel it in your hands, your arms, your chest, a looseness. The kind that comes when something is fully done. And outside your shuttered window, the moon rises quiet and round. You close your eyes. You see the scrolls lined in golden dash. You smell the lemon still. You drift. Deeper. Slower. The air is still sweet. And the silence. Soft as parchment. Long as prayer. Still proud.